Are we living in a simulation? I answer the question, coming up on News for Human Use. Hey there, humans, and welcome to another edition of News for Human Use, your stimulus of truth in the digital downturn of deceit. I'm Gene Pocket. I'm an author, the voice of the human resistance, and the only person standing for the presidency in the year 2020 who isn't a doggone millionaire. I'm a real person, just like you. I know what it's like to wonder where you're going to find quarters to do your next load of laundry. I know what it's like to wonder where you're going to find the strength to endure the next customer. I know what it's like to actually find your wit's end. It's a sobering experience, let me tell you what. Folks, I know what you're going through, and I am asking you to just hang on. November is just around the corner, and when I'm elected president, for the first time in your life, you're going to have a president that's working for you. A president that's working for each and every human being in the United States of America. A president who's working for we the people. Visit www.genepocket.org to find out how you can help make it happen, because we can only do it together. Now, folks, one of the ways we can come together is by communicating with each other. And that's why I love hearing from you, my human friends. I get so many kind letters and cards from you folks out there, and I really do appreciate it. You're what's keeping this campaign going. And my friends, this week I want to share with you an email I received just a few days ago, because it deals with something I've heard a lot of folks talking about in my travels across this great country of ours. And this message from someone called Cool Ranch caught my eye. So, my human friends, let's take a dip into the mailbag. Mailbag. Dear Gene Pocket, right up front, I feel like I should tell you I'm not a supporter and I've never made it more than 30 seconds into any of your videos. Too cringe. Well, we're off to a great start, but seriously, folks, this is exactly the kind of person that I want to talk to, and I'm delighted to engage in dialogue because communication is how we come together. Anyway, Cool Ranch goes on, too cringe, but you seem like the perfect person to help me out since you're obsessed with computers and shit. Recently, my coworker and I have been talking about the possibility that we are living in a simulation. There have been too many odd coincidences lately, glitches in the Matrix. Like a month ago, my grandma gave me a Regis Philbin record, and then the very next day he died. It's too weird. My coworker and I were talking about the booms, and that very night you posted a video about them. Do you think it's possible that we're all part of a simulation in a giant supercomputer? Also, my coworker would like to know, if we are in a simulation, is there a way to hack it for personal gain? Thanks in advance, Cool Ranch. Wow, look, folks, there is a lot to unpack here, but let me first say thanks to Cool Ranch for getting in touch, because it's a really good question and something that I've been meaning to address for a while now. Now, for the rest of my friends out there, if this is the first time you're hearing about this theory, let me assure you, I had the same reaction as you the first time I heard about it. I laughed out loud. The very notion that I, Gene Pocket, could be a simulation, that I could be a fictional character, is hilarious. But folks, if you know anything about me, you know that I like to keep an open mind. My mind is like a 7-Eleven, open 24/7, well-lit and filled with unnecessary indulgences. So I decided to look into this theory. Are we all living in a simulation? And folks, this may come as a surprise, but this isn't a new thing. This notion that reality isn't real is something that goes back thousands of years. Here it is on Wikipedia, quote, "There is a long philosophical and scientific history to the underlying thesis that reality is an illusion. This skeptical hypothesis can be traced back to antiquity, for example, to the butterfly dream of Zhuangzi, who was a 4th century philosopher, or the Indian philosophy of Maya, or in ancient Greek philosophy, Anaxarchus and Monimus likened existing things to a scene painting and supposed them to resemble the impressions experienced in sleep or madness. A version of the hypothesis was also theorized as a part of a philosophical argument by René Descartes," end quote. I think skeptical hypothesis is a perfect way to describe this simulation theory. To deny that reality is real, well, it's a dangerous path. I mean, to quote Robert Louis Stevenson, "Consideration dares not dwell upon this view. That way madness lies. Science carries us into zones of speculation where there is no habitable city for the mind of man," end quote. But folks, this simulation theory has had a modern revival, and here's George Mason University economist Robin Hatch explaining why. Quote, recent movies, including The Matrix, The 13th Floor, and Dark City, have posed the question, what if people in the future create role-playing simulations where the people in it do not know that they are in a simulation? This premise naturally leads to a premise even more thought-provoking. Future people might create simulations of a world much like our world. If so, how sure can each of us now be that we are not now living in a role-playing simulation? End quote. And folks, of course, humanity couldn't just leave the question there in the realm of science fiction. A Swedish philosopher called Nick Bostrom published a scientific paper with equations and the whole deal exploring the question of whether we're in a simulation all the way back in the year 2003. And this paper is largely responsible for the existence of this simulation theory in its modern form. Here's his thesis, quote, many works of science fiction, as well as some forecasts by serious technologists and futurologists, predict that enormous amounts of computing power will be available in the future. Let us suppose for a moment that these predictions are correct. One thing that later generations might do with their super powerful computers is run detailed simulations of their forebears or of people like their forebears. Because their computers would be so powerful, they could run a great many simulations. Suppose that these simulated people are conscious, as they would be if the simulations were sufficiently fine-grained. Then, it could be the case that the vast majority of minds like ours do not belong to the original race, but rather to people simulated by the advanced descendants of an original race. It is then possible to argue that if this were the case, we would be rational to think that we are likely among the simulated minds rather than among the original biological ones. Therefore, if we don't think that we are currently in a computer simulation, we are not entitled to believe that we will have descendants who will run lots of such simulations of their forebears. Simulating the entire universe down to the quantum level is obviously infeasible unless radically new physics is discovered. But in order to get a realistic simulation of human experience, much less is needed. Only whatever is required to ensure that the simulated humans interacting in normal human ways with their simulated environment don't notice any irregularities. The microscopic structure of the inside of the Earth can safely be omitted. Distant astronomical objects can have highly compressed representations. Verisimilitude need only extend to the narrow band of properties that we can observe from our planet or solar system spacecraft. On the surface of Earth, macroscopic objects in inhabited areas may need to be continuously simulated, but microscopic phenomena could likely be filled in ad hoc. Should any error occur, the director could easily edit the states of any brains that have become aware of an anomaly before it spoils the simulation. Alternatively, the director could skip back a few seconds and rerun the simulation in a way that avoids the problem. End quote. Folks, this is freaky stuff, and if Nick Bostrom is correct, it sounds like Cool Ranch may have spotted some irregularities in the simulation. And just for the record, if we are in a simulation, someone needs to check the disaster settings, because we've been on the hardest difficulty setting for a couple of decades now. But folks, despite this Nick Bostrom's logical diction, I gotta admit, I still have my doubts. I mean, why would you program a simulation to feel loneliness? Why are bots, machines, and artificial intelligences taking over a computer-generated history of humanity? But for the sake of our friend Cool Ranch and Cool Ranch's co-worker, let's assume that we are in a simulation. How can it be hacked? Well, George Mason University economist Robin Hatch thinks he knows. He says, quote, if you might be living in a simulation, then all else being equal, it seems you should care less about others, live more for today, make your world look likely to become eventually rich, expect to and try to participate in pivotal events, be entertaining and praiseworthy, and keep the famous people around you happy and interested in you, end quote. Folks, the way this economist creep says to live sounds awful. Lonely, grasping, and groveling, all for the sake of some computer program, some cosmic director. He wants to turn reality into some sort of Instagram reality, the whole world mugging for the cameras and doing a bit of soft shoe for the unseen director of the simulation. I won't do it. And Robin Hatch adds, quote, and if simulations tend to be ended when enough people in them become confident enough that they are living in a simulation, then if you want to live long, you might want to prevent too many others learning that they live in a simulation, end quote. Oops, sorry, Cool Ranch. If we are in a simulation, we may have just ended it by telling the world it exists. But if we are living in a simulation, it might already be too late. In a recent poll of over 7,000 people, 40% of them believe that we are living in a simulation. And in the past 4 years, the term NPC has seen a huge spike in usage. If you're unfamiliar with the term, it's derived from what's known as a non-player character in video games. You know, one of the background characters. People have started to label other people, other humans, as NPCs. Here's a user on a chat site called 4chan describing how to spot an NPC. Quote, "If you get in a discussion with them, it's always the same buzzwords and hackneyed arguments. They're the kind of people who make a show of discomfort when you break the status quo, like breaking the normie barrier to invoke a real discussion. It's like in a video game when you accidentally talk to somebody twice and they give you the exact lines word for word once more." End quote. Now, folks, this attitude, this thing, labeling people NPCs, is incredibly dangerous. It allows you to see others as somehow less than human. And not only that, it implies an underlying belief that we are all just living in a simulation and that some of us are more real than others. I think it's reprehensible. The slur NPC should be stricken from existence. But folks, the bottom line is this. There is no way to prove or disprove we are living in a simulation. It's like God or religion. There's no way to know for sure. It's all a matter of your own personal faith. If Cool Ranch and coworker Nacho Cheese want to believe we all live in a simulation, I'm all for it. I don't believe it, but it's okay. To each their own. Live and let live. The most important thing you can do right now is just be yourself. Whether we're in a simulation or not, be yourself. You're a unique individual with a beauty that's all your own. You may not know what it is yet, but let me assure you, your life has an important purpose. You can't spend the rest of your days worrying about what some cosmic director thinks. Be who you are. Assert your independence. Because it's only by being independent that we can find interdependence. And folks, we have to achieve interdependence because we have to come together. Whether we're in a simulation or not, we're going to need each other in the coming days. It's only together that we're going to be able to save this country. It's only together that we can save the world. And together, united under the banner of the Human Party, we're going to take the White House in November. And that's why I'm going to be here every single Thursday, bringing you news and information that's fit for human use. Tell the people you care about this video. Don't just share the link. Tell them face to face from a safe social distance. Maybe you know someone who thinks we're living in a simulation. Look into their eyes and tell them the truth. There's no way to know if we're living in a simulation, but I do know there's hope. There's hope if you vote for Gene Pocket. There's hope if you vote Human Party. There's hope if you buy Human Party merch on our web store. Be sure to visit www.genepocket.org. That's G-E-N-E pocket.org. We're going to find all kinds of information about my campaign, the Human Party, how you can volunteer, Human Party merchandise, and most importantly, the link to our donation page. Donate today if you agree that we need to keep America human. Hit subscribe and ring that bell for notifications. I'm Gene Pocket, and until next week, I wish good things for you, good things for the United States of America, and all the best to the human race. Thanks for watching, and have a great week. Before we go, let's take one last dip into the mailbag. Mailbag. What happened to Mr. Every Single Thursday Pocket? Maybe we ought to start calling you Sleepy Gene. That's okay, it's not like you're running for president or anything. No pressure. I can recommend a golf partner if you have spare time, as apparently he does. And it's simply signed, Fortune Dale.